Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I just got in from work, and I was gonna have. I thought, well, let me have a cup of herbal tea, and then I'll sit down and do a quick chat about the book that I most recently finished. And when I was looking through my teas, I remembered that I had bought this tea last week, I think, when I was buying that cake, for my anniversary video. This brand, the little market that I went to for that, has this brand, Buddha teas, and they have like a whole wall almost of them of different kinds. And I picked this one up because I'd never had it, holy basil tea. And it turned out that this holy basil tea is really appropriate to the chat that I'm about to do. It says, holy basil tea, known in India as tulsi, this member of the basil family enjoys sacred status in its home country, and it isn't hard to see why. Holy basil is regarded as both a holy symbol of the Hindu goddess Lakshmi and as an essential part of Ayurvedic herbal tradition. So I just enjoyed a cup of holy basil tea, getting ready to chat about Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. Siddhartha, I've been waiting to read this for quite a while. I've had it on my must-read list all year, and it just finally came up. This was published by Hermann Hesse originally back in 1922. In German. The edition that I read was translated by Susan Bernofsky, and this is a modern library edition. From 2008, I gathered, from what I could tell from the copyright page anyway. So why I read this, I've been chipping away at Hermann Hesse. Last year I read Steppenwolf as well as Magister Ludi, the Bead Game, for the second time. And so this year I wanted to be sure and get another Hesse work in. So I chose this one mainly because this one's pretty famous. I had heard of it sort of along with Steppenwolf. I think it had kind of a pretty great influence during the counterculture movement here in the United States in the 60s, sort of the countercultural youth movement of the 1960s. I believe this was a popular work, as was Steppenwolf. So I was always really interested in what it was about. It's relatively short, so anyway, I wanted to get it read, excuse me, and I'm really glad that I did. But what it's about is this young Siddhartha is in ancient India during the time of like the Buddha, and he is the son of a Brahmin, and he's being trained in this Brahmin caste. Priestly caste, learning the rituals and learning the prayers and stuff, but it's unfulfilling to him spiritually, and so he wants to, he wants to go and seek a different spiritual way, and so he actually goes to his father, and his father's not too thrilled about this, obviously at first, but he does set out on this spiritual journey with his friend Govinda, and they become ascetics, this sort of. In Hinduism, I forget the name of it, but it's sort of, they wear basically just a loincloth. They have no possessions. They fast a lot. It's one of these sort of these, I guess, philosophies where pleasure and things like that, just sort of like reject it. And so he does this for a while, and then he and his friend actually end up meeting the Buddha. And his friend decides to join the Buddha. But our Siddhartha is, a continual journeyer. He continues to sort of seek spiritual enlightenment. And I don't think I'm giving away spoilers, by the way, by saying this, because this is really not really a spoiler-driven narrative. This is a spiritual journey kind of thing. And it's not really driven from page turning, like what's going to happen next, other than his own sort of spiritual awareness that changes with his different experiences in life. But he does eventually meets a woman, Kamala, and this is another reason why this holy basil tea is sort of appropriate, because it says it's an aspect of Lakshmi, and I think Lakshmi has one of her aspects is called Kamala. But Kamala is a courtesan, so he leaves this aesthetic life and actually then pursues pleasure. So he pursues like how to earn money, becoming a merchant. Kamala is a wealthy courtesan. She tells him he has to have money in order for her to teach him the arts of love. So he seeks out, goes and seeks and figures out how to make money. And, ultimately learns his lessons that he can learn from that, and then continues on his journey. He does later talk about seekers, though, that with a really good quote that I'm gonna quote later. But so it's really his journey through these sorts of spiritual experiments that he goes through. He rejects doctrine, though. His friend does follow the Buddha, but Siddhartha states, doctrine is not the way to become spiritually fulfilled. Following someone else's rules for the spiritual journey is not going to work, he thinks. So that's why he does not end up joining the Buddha. But the words by the translator I thought were really interesting at the beginning of the book. The translator mentions that even though this borrows from Hinduism a lot and Buddhism, it's not meant to be really a representation of their religion. It does touch on aspects of it, but it's outside that. So so that's basically what it's about. So my thoughts about it, I love these stories about seekers. I did want to quote, though, one of the quotes from the book that he makes about seekers, which really has caused me to pause, and think about what I think about seeking. He says this: "When a person seeks," Siddhartha said, "it can easily happen that his eye sees only the thing that he is seeking. He is incapable of finding anything, of allowing anything to enter into him, because he is always looking only for what he is looking for. Because he has a goal, because he is possessed by his goal. Seeking means having a goal. Finding means being free, being open, having no goal." So, that's not something you often hear from a seeker, but, there we have it. That's what his Siddhartha says. Siddhartha actually has a meaning in Sanskrit, which I think is cool. I wrote it down. Siddha means achieved, and Artha means what was searched for. So basically, his name means achieved what was searched for. So, spoiler ending, achieved what was searched for. I won't describe the sort of the last stage of his journey that he took. I've described the first three. Three stages. There is a fourth. I won't go into that, though, because I think it's so cool. But what it did remind me of, though, which I'm very excited to be able to do, is to bring in, finally I get to mention another work that I really love that I've never mentioned on my channel yet. I don't have a good edition for it, so I don't have a really pretty cover. But the book is, let me get the cover for you. I have to kind of, Gitanjali by Rabindranath Tagore. So I read one of these Gutenberg Press kind of free things, so I don't have a pretty cover. But Gitanjali, if you don't know who Rabindranath Tagore is, he was a writer and intellectual from Bengal in India. Back in the early part of the 20th century, he was the first non-European to win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913. But there is a cool quote from Gitanjali that I just love that really reminds me so much of Siddhartha, and I think it's really appropriate. So let me just pull that up and read that real quick. If I can find it. There we go. It says, "The same stream of life that runs through my veins night and day runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth in numberless great blades of grass and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. It is the same life that is rocked in the ocean-cradle of birth and of death in ebb and flow. I feel my limbs are made glorious by the touch of this world of life, and my pride is from the life-throb of ages dancing in my blood this moment." That's Siddhartha. But this is actually from Gitanjali by Rabindranath Tagore. This part of Gitanjali is called Stream of Life. There's a beautiful song of this called Pran, which means life, I believe, in maybe in Sanskrit. Pran. It was used as the theme of this video that was real popular about 10 years ago. I'll put a link to it below. It was called Where the Hell is Matt? And he's dancing. And this song Pran, which is the lyrics are from or what I just read from Tagore to this song being sung in Bengali. And this person Matt is all around the world doing sort of a dance. The dance of life, right? So Pran. So I'll put a link to that below because I think it's just absolutely beautiful. If you haven't seen that, or if you haven't seen it in many years, it's well worth going and taking a look at again. So I think I'll leave leave this chat with that. I do have next year. I am looking at a couple of Hesse works. I will definitely get more in as I'm working my way through his stuff. Narcissus and Goldmund has come up as a potential read for next year, or Demian. So it's probably between one of those two. So there will be more Hesse coming up, but probably not until next year. So let's talk about what I'm reading now. Let me get my library open. All right, I need to close this. So wait a second. Just bear with me while I have to get through my, my electronic library because it's where most of this stuff is at this point. Right now, I am reading. I should have called this up before I started this, right? But I didn't. So I'm reading The Stone That Never Came Down by John Brunner. I'm about 2 or 3 chapters in. So far, this is pretty good. This is a near future dystopia. This is like an early 70s. Book by John Brunner, who won a Hugo for the Stand on Zanzibar. But this book had actually fallen out of print, and then there's a press that did some electronic editions of some of these out of print vintage sci-fi from like the 60s and 70s. So I'm reading this. I should be finished with it fairly soon. All right, let's do my drawing. I didn't have my bowl by me. But I'm drawing, my last 4 works. I'm letting the randomness of the universe pick my next work. My next work is going to be, what is it going to be? Musonius, Rufus, Lectures and Sayings. All right, so Musonius Rufus is a Roman Stoic, a Stoic philosopher. Let me pull up the cover for you. This is my work of Stoicism that I put on my must-read list for this year. If you've seen any of my Being Stoic videos where I'm going through the discourses by Epictetus chapter by chapter, Musonius Rufus was Epictetus's teacher. So this should be good. So that will be coming up in the very near future. So stay tuned for that. Until next time, take care.